Our first guest was elected to the San Diego Board of Supervisors in 1995. He is serving his sixth and final term. His 5th district is 1,800 square miles and goes from sea to desert. Welcome, Supervisor Horn.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So you gave a State of North County speech on Tuesday, as you do each year, or you have each year. Tell us what the highlight was.
Well, basically, when you're the chairman of the board, you give a state of the county. But because North County has always been so far away, the first year I was elected, I started the state of North County. So that the communities, there's 35 of them, but you know the major ones, Carlsbad and Vista and Oceanside, San Marcos, but there's a lot of little other communities, Fallbrook, Sunshine Summit, Warner Springs. So what we thought we would do, and what we started out doing, was getting folks together from those communities at the first of each year and find out what they needed. That's how we started this. It's now morphed into Allison was there, a big production with, but this year was a little bit different. We had the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department there to give demonstrations of what is available on a daily basis right here in North County. But most of my speech was about what we're doing. Let's say in Carlsbad, we're replacing the windows at the Boys and Girls Club, swimming pool, the old pool. In Oceanside, we're working with the Oceanside Boys and Girls Club. I like the Boys and Girls Clubs, the YMCA, and the after-school programs because it's really a diversionary tactic for youth. Get them involved in something else and rather than going into crime and the gang. So that it's really a prevention deal. So I highlighted a lot of those issues and a lot of the areas that we're involved in. One of the things, because we have the North County Gang Task Force, which is basically the SWAT team, we also have a gang commission. We meet at a round table with the community organizations from Vista, Oceanside, Escondido, San Marcos, Carlsbad, talk about what we can do in diverting gangs and helping getting kids out of the gangs. We have a mentorship program with Victory Outreach guys who were former gang members who are now mentor kids to get them out of the gangs. Last December, I highlighted, and it's still in operation, the tattoo removal machine. A lot of these young kids get into gangs and they get these gang tats on their necks. And then when they get out of the gang or want to get out of the gang, they can't get a job. And the reason is they got the tattoos. So I bought the machine last year for about $100,000. It has to be operated by a medical personnel, which is we do over in Escondido, and we can remove the tattoos. So
For all these anti-gang efforts, is there a way to gauge how effective they've been over time?
well, we don't have any more shootouts like we used to. You might remember.
We just had a woman shot dead in Escondido.
I understand. That was a random shot, but at the same time, we had 10 homicides in Balderrama Park in one day in 1995.
Okay.
That's when we started the SWAT team issues. The Bloods and the Crips have basically gone their way out to other communities. We try to keep a handle on the gangs, who's in the gangs. We like them to know that we're watching them all the time. If they violate any of the court orders, we will arrest them for felonies.
Is there a change in the kind of gangs that we are seeing now?
We aren't seeing as much violent as we had in the past. We had very violent gangs in the 90s. And so I think they're either aging or we're being able to divert kids away from being in those gangs.
Craig Carter, the Escondido police chief, he said recently that the types of crimes in Escondido have actually become more violent over the past few years, that more homicides and less, not as much of the tagging. So will the county be involved in increased enforcement there?
Well, they're part of, Escondido PD is part of the gang task force. It's made up of Escondido, Oceanside PD, Carlsbad Police Department, and then the other, San Marcos and Vista, are both sheriff's stations, so the sheriff's department involved in that. I don't know, I think, from my viewpoint, and just the reports I get every month from the gang commission, is that gang membership, we're diverting kids away from getting in the gangs. Now, I can't control whether somebody shoots somebody on a Sunday night or not with a random shot across the street and they hit the lady and killed her in Escondido.
They do say Escondido now has the biggest gang problem of all the cities along 78. I don't know if that was always the case. Has that changed?
No, it used to be Oceanside.
Right.
Yeah, it
But,
used to
and I still think we apply a lot of pressure to Oceanside and Vista and San Marcos. We don't want the homeboys to get out of control. You know, gangs don't honor city limits or they don't, you know, if they get pushed out of one area, they get in the car and go to the next area.
But don't they honor their own territory?
Yeah, they do honor their own territories, but that's why we have, like, the Pozzolis are under court order. They can't get together or within a mile of each other and those kinds of issues, so.
Do you think those gang injunctions will be updated? I mean,
Well,
I
I
know
think-
that most of them are like 10 years old or, you know, 7
Right.
years old, and those, I don't know if those gang members are aging out or at least getting older.
Well, the major gang unit is in Vista, the DA's office, and we've been dealing with our gangs since '95. So we have a pretty good record of who's who and where they're at and what they're doing. I think they do it in the city of San Diego, and I don't know much about their stuff because I keep wanting to apply the pressure here. But I just think we have to stay on it. I mean, my message to everyone is, this is not a political issue. This is something you have to stay on. And I always tell everybody, the next supervisor who takes my seat, I hope he understands or she understands that this is an issue of public safety, and it shouldn't be politicized. And we should stay on these gangs. I think I have the DA's concurrence with that, the sheriff's department, and almost all of the police departments. So we really have a very cooperative operation here. We share information, share data, share incidents. We didn't have that in the beginning, not at all. We had to build that. But I think we've been very successful over the last 23 years.
As you look forward to perhaps your successor, what's the thing that needs to be done between today and when you leave office?
Well, I would say to the electorate, examine the people you elect. We have spent, as you know, and I tout this all the time because I'm very proud of it, but we have, 16 years of a AAA credit rating, 10 years of a AAA bond rating. You can't do anything in government if you don't have any money. And the reason we've put the county in such good stead is the fact that we say no, and we have to say no, and we've built reserves and we've built this credit. We can afford to build sheriff stations. We can afford to build libraries. We can afford to build public structure. And actually, we just built the crime lab. We started last year, $106 million. We paid for it in cash. So there aren't very many governments can do that. So I would say whoever's going to be next here, they need to have that one responsibility, I think, well in their mind, because most politicians, they get in here, they just spend the money and think somebody's going to come rescue them. We haven't done that for 20 some odd years, and I would like to see that legacy or that philosophy carried forward. Now, I can't decide what their issues might be or their politics, but I think with that soundness, I think the taxpayer is secure.
Do you plan to endorse somebody at some point to
Well,
succeed you?
I've gone to two. There's Jim Desmond, the mayor of San Marcos, and Jerry Kern here in Oceanside. I've done both of their fundraisers for them, and I haven't endorsed anybody. But these are two guys. Those two guys I happen to know over the years. I think they're sound candidates. I'm not picking one or the other. I'm sure there's be others that get in the race. I haven't heard of anybody else. I've heard rumors of somebody else, but I haven't seen anybody get in. So I don't know. It's a ways out.
Is that something you're going to maintain right up until next November, a neutrality?
We'll see who gets in. We'll see how it develops.
Okay.
I don't want to endorse somebody today and find out
Right.
somebody else comes in, 10 days later.
Right.
When I first was in office, I was the president of Escondido School Board when I refused to censor the book Death of a Salesman. You might recall that, and I was thrown off the board. And then I had the election. But you never know. Things develop day by day when you're in public office. So I kind of want to hold my powder till we get closer to the end.
You definitely gave a pretty strong endorsement to San Marcos during your State of North
Well,
County
San Marcos
address.
we have done the State of North County in every city and many locales. We've done it at the Palomar Airport. We've done it City of Oceanside. We've done it in Vista. You saw that video that we
Yes.
showed.
Promotional video.
We've done a promotions video for every place we've done. And so they keep that, and they like those. So it just happened to be San Marcos' rotation. And because Jim has gotten in the race, I decided to do it at the Safety Center, highlight the sheriff's deputies and the fire departments. I think that was a good.
As opposed to highlighting Jim and
Yeah.
city
Well, I think,
council.
Jim, they've done a good job, and Jerry has done a good job here in Oceanside. I just thought it was their turn. I didn't want to skip over San Marcos because it was their turn in the rotation. They haven't had it for about 10 years, so.
You mentioned Palomar Airport. Can you give us an update on status of where things are with that runway project?
The final planning is in that phase and should be presented to us this coming year, okay? And then in there is an option. One of the options I put in there was the extension of the runway to the east by 800 feet. That's something the board will have to approve if they want to proceed with it, but it's in the plan. And
Do you
it's,
have a cost estimate for that?
I don't know, we guessed, and this is just a guess and it's not a cost estimate, but we guessed half of the money, which is about $68 million to extend the runway, we would have to put up. The rest the FAA would put up.
Is that, if it had an additional 800 feet, is that long enough that it would entice commercial airlines back?
It would allow aircraft to come from Europe to Palomar,
Okay.
nonstop. China to Palomar, nonstop. So because of the extra length.
Okay.
And the nice thing is, when you start getting those kind of aircraft, you're going to get much quieter machines coming into your airport, because those are more sophisticated, brand new equipment. But that is a huge range. That 800 feet is a huge range maker.
You
especially
mentioned
for-
actually during your talk that there might be a commercial airline starting there called Great
Oh, yeah,
Lakes.
Great
Do you know
Lakes.
anything about that?
I know, I heard Great Lakes is going to start starting May 1st. Around that area. I don't know exactly. I tried to get information on what the destinations might be, but it seems that was a Great Lakes airline. I guess it's Great Lakes. I don't know. But so we'll see what
Well, I
comes
think
in
one
there.
of the problems is that the planes that they're using for commercial purposes are getting larger and larger. So the planes that fly to Europe are more likely to be business jets that would benefit business people than your average resident of North County.
About 800
perhaps.
feet allows an airplane to carry much more fuel, leaving and coming in. And so that's the issue. You don't want to get, almost out of gas by the time you get here.
Will the improvements allow somebody, I don't know where Ted Vallis is on his airline one way or the other, if it's completely
I don't know.
defunct, but his problem, if I recall right, was the wingspan of his planes was slightly too large for the runway specs, according to FAA. Will this allow people like,
I don't really know about that part. I mean, I don't know. I know it. I thought Ted was, how do I say that? His own worst critic. Okay. It wasn't that we held him up. It's that he kept not wanting to finish the forms that he had to deal with. So as far as the equipment goes and the operation of airline, that's not my venue. I don't do that.
yeah, I don't know.
What do you think about the future of housing in North County? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I
with
think the
some of
problem with us, for us, is we can keep getting new regs put on us by the state, CEQA and water quality and those kinds of issues. They just lengthen the process for getting a building permit and add on to the fees. And so if you wonder why we get 40,000 cars a morning through Temecula coming over Fallbrook, it's because the price of housing is much cheaper over there, and they would rather transport in and out of here. If you're going to have manufacturers, and our businesses have been growing, you've got to find locations. Oceanside has been one. San Marcos has been one, where they've kept the price of housing down, and manufacturers can move in, and the people they employ have a place to purchase or rent or whatever. But housing is a big issue. We found that during the Veterans Conference. We have vast vouchers from the VA for veterans to pay their rent, and we have a very tough locating housing for them.
I guess I meant specifically these general plan amendments that so many developers are seeking.
Or they just get tired of the process, I think, and they want to go to the ballot. I think they'd be better off, let's try to streamline the process and not go to the ballot. They go to the ballot, and when they wind up in a political war, somebody doesn't want something, and somebody wants something, and they wind up spending an awful lot of money trying to streamline the process and shorten the process time. I don't really like these ballot measures that are put on without any planning. That's a tough thing.
But you are responsible for the unincorporated areas rather
Right.
than so in fact, that's one of the big questions, is whether you think there should be more development in that more
I think there ought to
semi-rural
be.
area.
If you look at the stats, and I don't have them with me right here, but we were just reviewing these a couple months ago, we've only, the amount of housing we're allowed to build every year, we're going to build about 25% of that. So there's like 75% that's going unbuilt. So we're not meeting our quota. So I think what we need to do is streamline that process for the unincorporated area so that we could get more building. I know some people don't want anything, but you got to put the housing somewhere. If you're going to, if the county of San Diego is going to pick up its portion of this, and I'm not on Sandag anymore because some of my colleagues don't want me there because I'm a little bit outspoken about spending money, but at the same time, I think that streamlining of the process is something the county, and I take responsibility for this, we need to do that. We need to streamline the process so we can get more housing in there, more affordable housing.
I realize you're not on Sandag any longer. However, Sandag did have a little problem, at least in the press, with Voice of San Diego's reporting on the Measure A,
Right.
the misstatement or
That's
the
why,
error
you
of.
might remember I opposed this when it came to the ballot.
Does that whole, the way it has unraveled, and for viewers, as well as I know the story, please correct me if I'm wrong, is they miscalculated by some $8 million, I think, the amount of revenue that, or $8 billion, the amount of revenue the tax was going to generate, and misstated it.
The problem is that it's politics. In order to get everybody to agree, they give everybody a piece of a pie. Okay? What happened is they had more than a pie. They had a pie and a half, right? So everybody got a little something so they'd all vote for it. But if you look at, stretch that spreadsheet out, you don't have enough money to finish what you started. And so I've long advocated that if you want us to vote on a, let's say, whatever say the road, 78 or 805, whatever it might be, give us that and let us vote on that. That's a project we'll start and we'll finish, and this is how much it costs. Don't make this giant conglomerate bowl of soup and promise everybody something, and there's not enough money in there to finish any of it. So I think that's the problem.
How much damage has this thing done to Sandag leadership?
I don't know, because I haven't been there to hear what they're complaining, but I think it's serious because, you know, when you sit on Sandag, you can either listen to their stats and take their report as the gospel, or you can be like me, and that's why I'm not sitting there anymore. I question everything. If it doesn't pencil out in a smaller area, it's not going to pencil out if you make it bigger. So anyway, that's how I look at it.
Are you concerned about the federal funding that might be changing under the new administration? Because
Well,
the
I don't know.
county budget is very dependent on that federal money.
Being one who voted for Trump, I like Trump. I don't know what he'll do. Sacramento is to me is crazy. They should be trying to figure out how to work with the president rather than defeat him every time we turn around. But I don't know. I haven't seen the impact yet.
Some of the proposed changes would radically cut programs that the
Sure.
county supervises, such as health, possibly even housing as well. And,
Right.
So does that concern you?
Well, it does for a year and 7 months. That concerns me. I have to make sure. That's why I hold the reserves. I've got enough to run my programs for a couple of years, but I'd like to have a better.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Horn.